This is the remembered myth of the first scream that was silenced, the scream that ruptured the false, dissonant tower of Troy. Now, you may have heard of the Trojan War and the story of Troy, of Paris, Helen, Cassandra, Hector. And this is a remembered story from my Oversoul stream. It's not about Helen, the woman who launched 1,000 ships, for being known as the most beautiful woman, gifted to Paris, a prince of Troy, by the goddess Aphrodite. But it is a story of Cassandra, the priestess of Apollo, who is said to have been cursed with the gift of prophecy to never be believed. However, that's not exactly the case. She was honored and believed when she was younger. It wasn't until Paris returned, changed, until Paris returned with toxins in his heart, separating his pride and power and will from his love, starting a spiral of incoherence within Paris. When Paris returned to Troy, the prince that had been lost, Cassandra immediately knew who he was before the others, and she could see not only who he was, but who he would become, and what would happen to Troy because of that. In this memory, she made too much of a public display, telling her family, Hector, her parents, the queen and king of Troy, about this in a little bit too zealous of a way. And at this time, Troy was known for its riches, its prosperity, and it had allowed the golden walls of Troy to be overrun with a power that was not rooted in self. And so the display was not appreciated. After this zealous display of truth, Cassandra was locked away, heavily guarded, heavily monitored for what she would say and what she would do. She was allowed at public events, didn't want to cause too much of a stir, and when Paris returned from Sparta with Helen of Troy in tow, the most beautiful woman in the world, the wife of Menelaus, and saw a disassociated woman who was not connected to her body, saw Paris, she not only saw them and the truth of their relationship, the objectifying of Helen and her body as a prize, as a commodity, she also saw the incoherence that this brought, that this feeded. She saw the walls of Troy, the fall of Troy, like the Tower card in the tarot. Troy on fire, people falling from its walls. She saw the incoherence that was arriving, was ignited, burning already through the walls of Troy that could not be seen by others. So she screamed. And she screamed. She screamed because it was already done. It was already in motion. This is the scream that resounded in so much truth in a society that was dissonant, that could not hear it, that did not want to see it, did not want to believe that their power and riches would fall, and wanted to misplace their love, wanted to distort their love, a parent's love, a lover's love, and disguise their pride as love, disguise their disembodied will as love. Helen and Keasa were not enemies. Helen, like I said, was a commodity, a prize, something taken and passed around, known for her beauty, yes, but it was a body with harmonic power that was not understood, a grace that could change the energy of a room, that could heal if it was seen and honored for what it was, but it never was truly seen. So Helen buried her presence in grief and sadness and walked through the halls of Troy, separating her presence from her body. Keasa was locked in a cell after her scream fractured the world, fractured Troy. Hector, their brother, Keasa's brother, Prince of Troy, had more coherence, more heart, more connection with his heart, will, and body than many did in her family. He always taught treated Keasa with a certain tenderness, a certain respect and regard. A deep feeling of her truth was held by him, and a deep grief for what Paris and Helen subjected themselves to and were experiencing. Hector was very honorable, held a lot of respect for his duty, his family, so he was pulled between his heart and his duty, but he allowed his heart to see a way to free Keasa and free Helen. So one night he tried to lead them out of the city of Troy, but when confronted, he couldn't quite separate his heart from his obligation and duty, from his respect for his family. So while he did not betray them when he tried to lead them out, he did not stand firmly in his own truth, his own coherence, a grief that stayed with him for the rest of his life. And as Sparta, the Spartans entered the walls, breached the walls of Troy, and lit them on fire, burning the gold and the spices and the abundance, Cassandra, Keasa, sat in her cell, buried her scream, allowed it to weave deeply through her, down through the earth, leaving the codes of the first scream that ruptured will and love. Codes of the first scream returning now, closing the loop. It's not just her loop that needs closing, but those are the codes I carry. It's also Helen's, the body that was disregarded, the soul that was never seen, never listened to or held. It's also Hector's, the man torn between heart, will, duty, and obligation, not knowing how to stand in his truth. It's also Paris. Paris is the one who allowed toxicity, pride, distortion, inflation to override his connection to himself, thinking only of what he could gain, only the value that others could see. And that is the story of the first scream.